And after all this, a long night of crying, tantrums, depression, panic attacks, all of it ended up being for what is it about the red pill? Well, we swapped notes. Now, I'm sure a lot of people have heard all kinds of different stories about us and what we do here, but I'm here to give you a glimpse inside the locker room to see what work is really happening. Here, we're going to be discussing the field reports that we've had from a few years back. At the time, brand new guys trying to learn the strategies that we talk about. Who am I? Well, I'm Ryan. I used to be a brand new guy. And like you, I was pretty good at women, pretty good at relationships, but I wasn't great. So when hard times hit and things got tough, it turns out there's nowhere for a man to go nowadays that actually wants him to succeed, to thrive, or to get better at what he does and improve his lot in life. So I did what any guy would do. I took it upon myself, found a bunch of guys in the same boat as me, talked amongst each other, and we built a working set of strategies based on the experience of hundreds of thousands of men. Just like us. Just like you. We're men swapping notes, we're iron sharpening iron. Welcome to the locker room. Let's get into it. Continuing from part 1. The worst part of this is I have a daughter from a relationship previously, and my wife has been increasingly crappier about that on her part. The last time my daughter was here, I had to go out and do some office stuff. She stayed at home with my wife, and she got treated like absolute crap. My daughter didn't tell me anything, but she told her grandmother, my mom. So I had to have a talk about my wife about being courteous with my daughter. This weekend, we had plans to go to my wife's best friend's wedding. I took care of the travel plans, the money, the wife got a new dress, etc., etc. Now the problem started once my wife was notified that my daughter was going with us. How the invitation was for 2 people, that's how she found out. So I told her to go by herself, so we didn't become a problem. And after that, she changed her tune. So when I picked up my daughter, problems came up again. She was ignoring her, she was forgetting to make her dinner along with me, she was making remarks when my daughter played with the baby. So after the kids went to sleep, I notified the wife she could go by herself and gave her the bus money. Go take the bus to the station in the morning. The next morning, she threw a tantrum on how I ruined everything for her, blah, blah, blah. So she did not go to the wedding and threw herself on depression. And you know what? I don't care anymore. I wasn't going. I gave her the means to go. She was responsible for going or not. Her tantrums, instead of affecting me like they used to, look to me like a petulant teenager. And if she goes, if she stays, that's her problem, not mine. I'm not going to put her vagina above my daughter or my son. An update to this too. After a long night of crying, tantrums, depression, panic attacks, calling her mom to tell me if she can go live there, calling her friends about how she made all this effort for nothing, all kinds of drama and holding the line, the way she should treat my daughter, well, guess who changed their behavior? Yep. The wife. She made a big change this morning on the way she treats my daughter. She's still very sad and resentful she missed her best friend's wedding, but now she knows I will burn down Rome when it comes to my kids. A couple terms before we get started. Female competition. This is something extremely common. It happens a lot with fathers and daughters, with wives and a guy's female friends, wife and ex-wife, wife and the mother-in-law. Basically, any combination of 2 girls that have somewhat of a vested interest in the attention of the man. What happens is the girl treats this girl as a threat. Now, you're mostly going to see this with mother-in-laws, so I'll go on that route. What happens is, especially if the guy is a bit of a mama's boy, he'll start deferring to his mom, at which point the wife starts to feel threatened to that because she kind of wants sole custody of his commitment. It's no different than if you watched a guy walking up to your wife and then giving her a pat on the butt. The problem with this comes is they do all this weird, petty, subversive behavior, and you can read more about this in Ian Ironwood's post where he talks about the female social matrix. So wholehearted acceptance and constant means of undermining to jockey for position. And the fact that he didn't nip this in the butt early on means that he only understood it later on. Now, the funny part is you watch his story, he essentially says the daughter comes first. And you'll notice the wife is very, very angry about that to the point where she's having a temper tantrum. Just something to think about when you think about those stories of single moms saying that my kids come first and the guy having a bit of a problem with it. It looks like it's a bit of a universal trait. The most responsible teenager in the room. This is a great old school post from a blog called No Ma'am. If you can remember, that's the old Married with Children fraternity that Al Bundy made. When guys start to look at their women, they realize something. They realize that they haven't had to mature to the same extent that the guy has. I'm sure you've seen a lot of stories where girls that are 14, 15 act much more mature than their male counterparts. The problem is, once you get to the age of sexual maturity, so 18 years old, we'll say there, a lot of girls find that they really don't have to mature past that because everybody around them tends to coddle the way they look at the world, and they get a very overly naive and optimistic worldview. Now, it's not all women, but it's a lot. There was a joke I actually had on a former podcast with Dr. Seeger where he was dating a model, and he asked her, how old were you when you realized how much drinks cost? And that's kind of the point here. So when you look at girls, you have to stop looking at them as if they're guys with breasts. You kind of have to look at somebody who, and this is going to happen, the more attractive they are, the less emotionally developed they may be. And so that's why their mental models will default to crying and temper tantrums, that sort of thing. Keep in mind too, this isn't always the case of just some low value woman or a thought. A lot of very educated and unsupermodel like women will have the same behavior. The only difference is instead of manifesting as temper tantrums, it'll manifest as a very eloquent, kind of nagging exterior to it. A lot of times when you see that woman who's very manipulative with the language, very aggressive with it, and a lot of what you see in that modern day feminism kind of language, a lot of that stuff is the same manifestation of the underlying issue here. It's that emotional stability that hasn't been developed due to being coddled in young adulthood. Stay plan is the same as the go plan. It's a catchy little term. It's developed for a good reason. A lot of guys will fall into that initial covert contract where my wife is perfect and all that's required is for me to step up, be a man, start working out, start making all the decisions in the house, basically do like a soft Sierra Law mixed with self-improvement, and then she will come around and love me unconditionally. It's not how it works. The reason we say the stay plan is the same as the go plan is because a guy needs to make sure that whatever his male action plan is over the next 12 months, it cannot be dependent on the reaction from the wife or the girlfriend. It's not how it works. If at the end of your 12 months, your wife completely detaches, cannot stand you, and wants out, takes the kids, and sleeps with Chad, well, then your time is completely wasted if she's the focus of it. Now, this is actually a surprisingly difficult one. Guys have a very difficult time not doing things to impress their wife. The advice for this guy. This is a clear case of boundary and expectation management. Right now, his wife is throwing out all kinds of comfort tests, which look a lot like overt disrespect for the daughter and for himself. She doesn't know the way this is normalized, and if you take the sexuality out of this, this is the same dynamic that guys that have two girlfriends living with them have to put up with. Two girls need to know where they are in the pecking order, and they can't be left to their own devices, because what's going to happen is they're going to drive a wedge in between the other two people in this love triangle as best they can. And this is the case, the wife actually stopped feeding the daughter, the wife ignoring the daughter, the wife disrespecting the daughter, the wife manipulating the guy through tears and temper tantrums. What he needs to do is sort this out, and he kind of did that in this field report. If you'll see that in the end, he was willing to nuke what she valued because he didn't care if she wasn't acting right. Now, was it the best way? Who knows? But it seems to have gotten the point across, at least now. Hopefully it's more consistent. So what's in this for you? Now, there's a couple little tidbits that you can take from this. First thing, like I said, take the sexuality out of this. When you're dealing with a woman, a wife, and a daughter, it's the same general concept. You have to make sure you set your strong boundaries. You have to make sure you enforce your boundaries. You have to make sure you do it consistently. And you have to keep girls from trying to treat the relationship with the girls that are in the household as if it's some sort of pecking order that they have to fight around. You're going to create a lot more harmony between a mother-in-law, wife, a daughter. You're going to be able to fix all these things much better if you start treating them with the same expectation that they're the most responsible teenager in the room and that you have to take the lead. Shut down these kind of petty quibbles right away. Make sure you let people know what you will and you won't put up with. And they're still going to be like this, but they're going to keep from doing it in front of you, which is really all that matters. If they want to be petty to each other, that's fine. If it ends up in your wheelhouse, then it becomes your problem, and then you'll deal with it. In that sense, you're using your boundaries to make sure your girls start acting right to the extent that they can. An alternative for this? That's the thing. I don't know if there is an alternative for this. This is really pretty good from a textbook standpoint. I mean, he wanted to take the daughter to the wedding. We can argue whether maybe he didn't want to take the daughter to the wedding because he knows how the wife would react, but I mean, you can't go through a family scenario with a stepmother and a daughter without expecting them to have to learn to get along. So whether it was the wedding or another event, it was bound to happen. So best to deal with it now. Offered solutions. I mean, gave her the money. Here, you go to the wedding yourself if you want to. Pretty standard. I'd say that too. You're either going to go by my way or the highway. She has a temper tantrum. He holds frame. Maybe he could have left and done his own thing and left her alone with her problems. Maybe got to sit there and just been a little bit more stoic. Again, those are details that really don't matter. The end result is exactly where he wants it to be. He's enforcing his boundary and it's not going to happen. Now for him, it's easy. Father's love for their child. It's very easy for a guy to be stoic and hold his boundary tight. Actually, you know what? I'll take that back because I see a lot of guys who basically throw their children under the bus because they're afraid to stand up to their wife. So the alternative to this one, I don't think there is an alternative. Anyways, on that note, I'll leave you guys to it. I'll catch you on the next one.